Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Pratt. I like the applause before I even say anything. Well done, Pratt. I appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. We're thrilled to have you here and glad you could find your way to the Park Plaza. Zig Ziglar, renowned American author, once said, "The most important persuasion tool you can have in your entire arsenal is integrity." The most important persuasion tool you can have in your entire arsenal is integrity. It's a timeless reminder that leadership is not just vision and results, but also trust. And in banking, perhaps as much as any other industry, trust and integrity form the foundation upon which everything else is built. On behalf of Boston College and the Carroll School of Management, welcome to the Boston College Chief Executives Club. Trust and integrity are not just ideals, they're the currency that sustain long-term success. When CEOs gather in forums like this, we're reminded that strategies change, that technologies evolve, and that markets shift. But the leaders who endure are those who remember that decisions are based with accountability, transparency, and doing the right thing. In holding true to those principles, banks and organizations of every kind build not only financial strength, but they also strengthen the communities in which they operate. Now, you should have received an invitation to our next event on October 1st, when Gene Hines of Wellington will be welcoming and hosting Robert Bradway of Amgen. We'll be back here at the Park Plaza. Then on November 6th, we're thrilled to be bringing Adina Friedman, CEO of NASDAQ. We'll be returning to the Boston Harbor Hotel. Additionally, in the coming days, you'll be receiving some information about an enhanced guest policy that we're implementing for this coming year, the opportunity to bring more people to the room, to engage with members, and to be part of our community. Now, for today's program. Our host is, of course, Bob Rivers, the chairman and executive chair of Eastern Bank, the largest commercial bank headquartered in Massachusetts, with over $25 billion in total assets and more than 110 locations scattered around Eastern Massachusetts. A champion for diversity and justice, Bob has transformed Eastern into a beacon of integrity-driven service in Greater Boston. As everyone in our community knows, Bob is one of the most engaged business leaders in Massachusetts, using his platform to make society better, serving on a variety of boards and consistently ranked among the most influential people in our city. A graduate of Stonehill College, where he serves on the Board of Trustees. He received his MBA from the University of Rochester, Simon School of Business. We're honored to welcome our keynote speaker, René F. Jones, Chairman and CEO of M&T Bank, a community-focused institution with over $211 billion in assets and a network of over 900 branches around the United States. Spanning a 30-year career at M&T Bank, René's journey includes constant promotions, all showcasing his dedication to responsible leadership and inclusive economic opportunity. Since becoming CEO in 2017, the company has grown steadily, nearly doubling in total assets since he started. René also participates in organizations that advance the banking industry and society in his community, including service on the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the Pam Math Challenge, and service on the Board of Trustees at his alma mater, Boston College. He too received his MBA from the University of Rochester, just like Bob. The similarities between Bob and René, their values, careers, and local roots are striking, and I'll let them share those in their own words. Please join me in welcoming two outstanding leaders, one from Stoughton, one from Ayer. Bob and René, please take the stage.
Stoughton, or probably even Air, has ever had a shout out in a room like this.
I don't think so. I don't think we played each other.
So as you learn, René and I have known each other for a long time, and we'll cover that in a bit. But nonetheless, we did come to this discussion with an agreement about reviewing questions in advance, making sure we're not telling any secrets from back in the day. But I did tell him I'm going to start off with an unscripted question, because how could I not? As you know, M&T is headquartered in Buffalo, home of the Buffalo Bills, and has naming rights for the Baltimore Ravens Stadium, M&T Bank Stadium. And so it was just a thrilling comeback victory if you're a Buffalo fan. Down 15 points with just 5 minutes to go to come back and win 41-40. And so I have to ask you, René, given your strong presence in both cities, how did you make up your mind who to root for? And could you show it?
Oh, that's a difficult one. So I have to start by saying what my goal is, which I tell everybody associated with the Bills and associated with the Ravens, is that I need both of those teams to get into the playoffs and face each other for the AFC Championship. That's my goal.
Yeah.
So along the way, there can be some wins and losses. As long as that happens, I think we're good.
As long as the Bills win the Super Bowl, that's.
But if you were to watch my travel patterns over this past weekend, I avoided a dinner at a popular restaurant in Buffalo where all the Ravens were going to be. The owner did a very nice job. He had a menu, a fixed menu, and it had in the left-hand corner a Bills logo, and in the right-hand corner a Ravens logo. But if you happened to flip it over, it said "Go Bills." And then I skirted around lunch in different places to be with whoever was winning, which was mostly the Ravens, until the end. I went home.
Great. Well, in all seriousness, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this. It's a real personal treat to do this. And as I mentioned, René and I have known each other for over 30 years. You can believe it. And in the parallels in our life's journeys are striking. As Warren mentioned, we were both grew up here in Massachusetts. We both went on to Catholic colleges here in Massachusetts, René, BC, myself, Stonehill. We are still very much rooted here. We both have vacation homes on Cape Cod. And René, I understand you're searching for a home here in Boston, you and your wife.
That's right.
So that might be a news flash to some of you, but that's very exciting. So he's coming home as I did several years ago. As Warren also mentioned, we both graduated with our MBAs from the same graduate school. We were recruited by M&T. René was the year after me, so I went to M&T, and then René followed. He stayed for now 33 years. I left after 14. And during our times as CEOs, both of us have grown our bank's total assets by double in that period, although M&T's 7 times the size of Eastern.
It had a head start.
Yeah. But I do want to point out, as I was putting this together, René and I know a lot of this stuff, but we were both struck by the incredible degree of similarities in our journeys. And when I sent him the questions and sent him all these points, it was, I had to admit to him, it's a bit creepy. But I did want to point out that, I was not following him. I went to M&T first. I came back to Boston first. So I think the stalker moniker is more yours than mine.
I'll accept the moniker. I'll accept the moniker. As I said to Bob, he doesn't remember this, but it was a recession when we were leaving school, and I think we both wanted to come back to the coast here. But I got this offer from this place, M&T, and I didn't know anything about it. So I looked in the directory. I saw that Bob was from New England and he just had taken the job there. So I called him up and I said, well, what's the deal? Is it a decent place to work? Whatever. I went. So thanks.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier that it was the early 90s, so the country was in a recession. And we were both sort of sweating it out at the time, thinking about, are we going to get a job when we graduate? But there's a lot, given our shared personal history, that we can talk about. But one of the things I wanted to start with is something that's really core to M&T and something that's certainly core to Eastern. And René's predecessor was a guy named Bob Wilmers, who led the bank for several decades before René succeeded Bob. And at M&T, Bob always stressed the importance of community. And it's something that we continue to stress. But the thing that impresses me most, René, about this is how do you maintain that community connection when you're spread over now multiple states? I mean, we wrestle with this as we expand just within the region. But nonetheless, I see pictures of you riding in the Pan Mass Challenge, and of course your team is very engaged here. So how do you make that work and keep that tradition alive?
Well, first of all, I'll say, Pan Mass, you got to show up. I mean, you do, and that you know that. And most things happen after.
I usually show up and watch.
Yes. Most things happen after 5 o'clock, right? So I guess you have to start, for me, I have to start with the definition of community banking or a bank for communities. And the way I think about it is that a vibrant economy has to have more than one bank. It has to have multiple institutions. And the size differential is not a good or bad, it's actually a real positive. If you have, the largest banks in the country are promoting commerce and international trade with multinational companies that produce jobs for us, right, and that make our economy relevant. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have community bankers. And I think it's better, the best way to say it is bankers, not the bank, who are sitting there every day with you in the religious institutions, with you in the universities, in the not-for-profits, who understand what's actually happening on the ground, and who really have a direct path to leadership. And so one of the things that you know, Bob, is we were very lucky because when Bob took over M&T, the employees and the board owned 25% of the company. And then the year you joined, or maybe the year after, Mr. Buffett came in and bought 8% of the company. So we had this really high ownership space. And the thing that we did is we produced leaders in a way that is sometimes hard to do when you're in a large public company. And so that ownership thing, that producing of talent, much like the community banker, is the thing you're trying to preserve. But as you point out, there's this classic challenge as all institutions get bigger. There's the McDonald's case where they just at some point couldn't figure out how to keep the bathrooms clean, and that's how they came up with the franchise model. So for us, our equivalent of the franchise model is our 27 regional presidents. And over time, you could see this challenge growing. You had to change the systems and the management systems to reorient it to put in place and front and center the people who are closest to your customers. So really, at M&T, people call us a bank, but basically we build leaders. And the more leaders we build, the better off we're in the community. And if you look over time, what you'll begin to see, as you've seen, is that as people tend to leave, or I call it graduate, they end up being the head of the Maryland Food Bank, and they end up being the head of the Urban League in Buffalo, right, and the various institutions, because it's about leadership in the community.
And to that point, we're a product of one of those programs, and it's always been a mark of distinction. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the development programs, because M&T is very intentional about this, and you can see the product of developing leaders. That's just not a buzzword. You go through the litany of senior managers, executive managers that have been with the company that came through one or either of those programs over the years. It's incredibly impressive, that are still at the bank.
Yeah, so when Bob Wilmers came to the bank, one of the first things he did, and he understood what he was doing, nobody else did, is he had a management development program, which is undergrads typically coming out of school. Arts and science is really important. We could teach banking, as you guys know, anybody can do banking. And then he, in '85, he created an executive associate program where he went out to 8 to 10 schools that were outside of Buffalo, where the bank was headquartered, to bring in talent. So today, 40 some odd years later, we hire about 225 undergrads and graduate students every year to teach them banking. And what's really fascinating about it is it fits in with this building of leaders. And over time, you develop, by developing your own people, it allows you to keep this sense of community. It's sort of hard to describe, you got to be there, but you're right.
Right.
You look through the entire management team and you see it. And a really quick story that you don't know about is 2013, we get invited to our boss's house in Bordeaux. And Bob and I go for a walk, and he says, well, we'll walk down this road, I'll show you my new winery. And the winery looked like a Roman ruin. It was older than the United States. No roof on it. And I said, what are you doing? You're 78 years old. What in the world are you doing with this thing? And he's like, I didn't really want to do it, but the people that run the main winery needed something to do. And he said, I never wanted to do any of those acquisitions. You all just needed something to do. So I just said yes. But that orientation, right, was not about profits. It was about like talent, right? Mm-hmm. And people making a difference and producing leaders.
Yeah, I remember that also around that same time, the bank adopted a public school.
Yes.
To try to help lead and turn around the system. It's really a striking legacy. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Boston, because obviously you have strong connections here to Massachusetts and the Boston region. And your commitment to community is everywhere that M&T has a presence, but it's outsized here. I always remarked, ever since I think you guys got here, maybe in 2017, when you first entered the market, how often I would see you here in all the places you needed to be. And I asked some of your colleagues about it, and I'll have to read this quote. They say, René is wildly committed to growing this market. I mean, it is outsized in the importance in your mind, at least for those around you. And why is that? Is it an emotional thing? I'm sure that's part of it. But what else is there?
I think it's cultural fit. And obviously, being from here, there's an affinity, but think of that more as understanding what Boston is about and what the neighboring towns are about, and the fact that it is not one place, right? There's a lot of townships. Yeah. But that cultural fit is really important, and I would say Bostonians, I would say also for everybody from New England, are really, really passionately engaged in their communities and the health of their communities, and there's a high amount of ownership in that space. So, part of our strategy is that we can't go everywhere. And so we have to pick the places we go. And I often say that one of our clients and a good friend of mine is Danny Wegmans. You guys have heard of Wegmans, an extraordinary company. Mm-hmm. And one day he asked me, René, we're in the same states and we're doing the same thing. Where are you going to go next? And I thought to myself, I said, well, I'm going to go anywhere until I get what you have. And he's like, what do we have? And I'm like, well, people petition your company to come. When a bank does an acquisition, they petition you to go away. Right? So if you think of the goal should be like, how do we earn the right for people to petition us to come? And how do we do such a good job that we can do that? And you have to go to places that have an affinity for what you're about. For us, we're in a few large cities, but mostly we're in small towns and mid-tier cities across footprints like Utica and Altoona, Pennsylvania, which you probably worked at or something one day.
Oh yeah, yes, been there.
And so that's where it starts. It's with, are you like-minded and can you make a difference? And when Jack Barnes and I had chatted, we had known each other, or our predecessors had known each other for 20, 30 years. They were trying to build something that they felt didn't exist, and we felt also didn't exist here, that there wasn't an M&T here. And I'm not just saying this, I would always say for the last decade, except for Eastern Savings Bank. That model where you show up bigger than life and nobody understands why you do it, both people and dollars, is the thing that we grew up on.
Yeah, right.
So I think there's an opportunity to sort of add an institution that solves the problem that a lot of you who've been around for a very, very long time remember, which is that we used to have financial institutions, many of which were headquartered here, and over time those went away, and that has an impact on the community. So if you can infuse that thinking back in, we can get in a room like a room today and begin to solve problems together as they emerge, as opposed to sort of wait around for someone to come help us from some other city that's the capital.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly infused that here. I mean, lots of credit to Grace Lee, who's here, who's your regional president, who really, I think, was instrumental in that transformation.
Yeah.
From People's United to M&T. Jonathan Sanchez, who you stole from us, by the way. And,
I didn't.
And I keep trying to recruit Jonathan back, but Jonathan says to me, his hope is that you buy us, and that's how we'll come together. So,
I think Jonathan's playing both of us.
yeah, indeed. As I know you know Jonathan as I do, that's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
But it does start with the culture always in your people. And one of the things that's also distinctive about M&T's culture is innovation, the focus on innovation, which everyone presumes the big banks spend a lot of money on innovation and invest in it. But your intentionality has been outsized. And I say this with a little bit of trepidation because one of the members of our board of directors is Diane Hessen, who tells me I should be spending 25% of my time on AI these days. I'm getting there, Diane.
26.
But you built an innovation center in downtown Buffalo with hundreds of people, replicated that in Wilmington, Delaware, I think it was. And so you have two sites, bookcasing your market devoted to innovation. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about why have you made that such commitment, beyond the obvious to most people, because again, M&T's has been incredibly outsized.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It starts with this idea that because we had such a high ownership structure, we tend to think about being around. It sounds funny, but banks go away at a pretty rapid rate. And so when we think about, for us to be around in an evolving, innovating world, more technology spend, we can't follow what the 4 or 5 biggest institutions can do. If we try to outspend them or do all the same things, it's not going to work. And so we're really focused on trying to be relatively unique, right? An outsized space and trying to help and bring communities together and have that be our thing. So what we decided really was that we couldn't predict what the next innovation was going to be, but we thought that it would be people-driven. And what I mean by that is that no one person is going to come up with all the solutions. And so if you can partner better, you're going to have an advantage. And so we brought on a new CIO, and the thought process there was, let's show technologists that we believe in what they do for a living. And so it ended up that we took the old HSBC headquarters, which had gone under after Household, and it was fallow. And we took the 1.1 million square feet, we took a third of it, and we moved all our technologists there. We hired 1,000 more technologists, and we had a deal with the builder that no one could go in the building unless they were focused on innovation. So for example, every year 5 companies come to a pitch competition. If they win the competition, they have to move their company and their employees to Buffalo. They go in the tower. And there was the concept behind it was that all of our assets are underutilized. And if we make the assets that we have community assets, we're going to do good things will come from that in the space. And so if you look at the tower today, all the common space, common training, people are taking training classes together from different companies. They've produced this place that when someone thinks about their career and they're thinking about, should I go to Google or should I maybe come to M&T, what they see is a place that cares about what they do. And what partners come in and see is, wow, these are the kind of, even though these guys aren't as good as us, they see what we see. And it's been an extraordinary journey over the last several years. But 6 years ago, our budget for technology was $330 million. This year we'll cross $1 billion. It's an extraordinary race, right? And you're still trying to, the way we think we're going to compete, if I could say win it, it would be around people and talent and really talented people who want to come and work in your environment.
Yeah. No, and just to put this in perspective, folks, you might hear like the old HSBC headquarters, and there's lots of old bank headquarters around, and how impressive is that? If you've ever been to Buffalo, the old HSBC headquarters is right down the end of Main Street on the lake in one of the biggest buildings in town. In fact, as someone who was with M&T many years ago, I remember looking up at what was then Marine Midland and trying to finally take over share there. But it's really an extraordinary commitment. How do you inculcate the culture through everyone else in the company? Because we've had an innovation lab now for a number of years, and that's been one of our drives, is how do we develop a much more innovative culture throughout the company?
You go through all the cycles, centralize it, decentralize it, go through all that stuff. Really, at the end of the day, it's change management. And so in the last 2 years, we've souped up our change management capabilities. When you think about that topic, change management, and you think about the idea we talked about empowering our regional presidents, Grace and I went through this lovely journey together, which was early on, I'm like, you got to figure out where we're going to live. You got to figure out where we're going to be in Boston, and everybody from Buffalo is going to tell you, you're spending too much money, it's not going to work, and we're going to go. And basically went on this journey to show people that you needed to actually have somebody who lived here every day that was going to build your culture and decide where you were going to come to work, and that was actually symbolic for every other activity that took place in the institution. And so change management is what you're at, and part of that is including everybody and requiring massive amounts of communication. So when you think you're done, do it 3 more times. Include people, and it'll go better than not.
Yeah, and having been to your headquarters here, it's very impressive in terms of the statement you've made in downtown Boston. Grace, again.
Grace, yes, Grace.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about. So when you first became CEO, you were one of only 4 black CEOs among the Fortune 500. Now, since then, that number has doubled to 8, but still it's less than 2%. And given your role and who you are, how do you think about DEI in these times where it's being challenged, it's being questioned, people are backing away from commitments or certainly being less visible about them? How do you think about DEI in this moment?
I think we're extraordinarily lucky because I'm gonna say this and it won't mean anything, and then I'll try to describe it. But it's sort of what we're about, and it always has been. And again, with the ownership structure that we started with being so closely held, Bob was always curious about talent and different types of people and opportunity. And the goal, it still is, our goal was not to be a bank, it was to make a difference in people's lives, and we happen to know a bunch about finance. And so this idea around education, giving people access to education, was always really important. There are 2 stories which I can tell quick. One was, if you go back 10 years or so ago, everybody just started piling on with this idea that you had to disclose and make transparent every effort that you were doing. And a lot of it came from the big investment houses that were pushing that process. We had a really hard time with it. And the reason we had a hard time with it is because we sat around saying, well, if we talk about what we do, then that's not genuine. And so we really can't publish a report that says we do all this stuff because that's not why we do it, and who really cares? And so first I'd say we were wrong. Because when we actually sort of went down that road, what we didn't understand is that opening up that transparency brought tons of people to us who also believed in the things that we believed. And we didn't really understand the amplifying effect of that. The second thing was when we came to New England with the merger with People's United. One of the things that we decided to do was, for the first time in our history, we did a listening tour. So I went and I listened to 300 individual not-for-profits in the 5 states in New England. Extraordinary. Like, first meeting, someone lays out everything that they need, they're talking about housing, they finish and they start crying. And so we took that and said to ourselves, okay, we got to do something here. So we built a community growth plan that was investing in the subset of those 300 because they represented what the communities were. And so when you look at all those, we're continuing to do all those things because it was about the activities that we wanted to do and not about the labels, right? And so it's an odd thing, but I do think this will be part of the journey where somewhere down the road we're going to wake up and what's happened over the past year is going to be accountable for fueling more and more of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it's so much rooted, of course, in what I think of as a moral imperative and values, but it's actualized in things that are important to the business. It's performance. It's innovation. It's things that you do in community.
Yeah. And in our space, knowledge is everything, and knowledge is all about people.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions that folks in the audience might have. So, do we have any questions for René? Mihal.
René, thanks for being with us. Bob and I talked a little bit before the lunch about the acquisition environment, mergers, the banking space. Can you give us some thoughts just in terms of give us some thoughts just on how you're thinking about future mergers and acquisitions, and maybe some lessons learned from the People's acquisition that you made?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Well, look, other than the timing of it, we're in this space that is probably 40 years long of bank acquisitions and reducing the number of banks. 4,700 banks in the United States, probably too much. But we're going to go through a space where, because of the regulatory environment, my sense is you'll see a lot more mergers. I always have a difficult time with that because I don't think it's regulation or the opening up that actually makes a good partnership. And for us, there aren't a ton of partners. We've got to be like-minded because the integration has to go well, and you're adding folks. So in People's United, you just think about it this way. We had 17,000 employees, and we added 5,000. If those 5,000 employees don't have some semblance of the same goal and what you're trying to do, it's just not going to go well. And not only will it not go well, it'll probably deteriorate the strength of your institution. So in my mind, it's really the work that we constantly do to get to know people. And as we find like-minded folks, it may end up with a partnership. For us, what makes it even more limiting is we don't have a strategy that's to be a large national institution. But we do need density, and so we believe in scale and being big in the community. Back in 2017, and I had a session with the Breakfast Club here, and my big question was, I got 50 employees, like how can I show up and feel like we're here, right? Because we need mass to do that. And so we tend to focus on relationships. It's not really timing, but I do think you're going to see a lot of transactions that go on. Sometimes a lot of those transactions lead to another transaction down the road if their reason wasn't right.
Other questions, folks? In the back. Oh, wait for the mic. Wait for the mic if you would. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Katie. I'm from Boston Children's Hospital. Thank you both. This has been wonderful. I have a quick question, René. I read that you are the youngest of 6 children. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about if that played a part in, how you grew up and your leadership style and any learnings through that. Thanks.
My sisters would all say that I was the brat. There were 6 of us. My dad was a military guy, so the reason we were in air is because his last stop was Fort Devens, and there was an 18-year span between us. So my oldest sister, and then every 2 years, 3 girls, then 3 boys. It was my siblings had a huge impact on me. So think about being having a sister that's 18 years older. I don't know how to really define that, but I often tell the story of I decided I was going to maybe go to community college or go into the military. And my sister was like, absolutely not. That's not happening. So she took me from Air over to Chestnut Hill. She was going to law school there. She had been a cashier and decided to go to law school. And she walked me up Heartbreak Hill, showed me the campus, and she goes, "This is where you're going to apply." And when I filled out the application, as we always did, in her kitchen was, anybody could go into the kitchen, but it was off limits when she was studying, which was a lot. So I was filling out my application, and rate yourself on 1 to 10 on these attributes, and I was like 4, 5, 4. She ripped that up, and she's like, I don't want anything less than a 9. So my brothers and sisters were always super influential to me, and then the ones that were close. And I always tell the story about people always helping me out. I kind of think it probably started there because I was the youngest. Thanks for asking.
So I got to warn you, Renee, this could be a tough one.
Oh,
Diane.
gosh.
Oh, no.
I'm not going to
I
ask
heard
about
this.
AI. I must not be the only one in this room just being struck by how, Eastern is, the largest Massachusetts headquartered bank in the region, and you're coming into Eastern's territory, and yet the two of you have like this love affair going on up in the front of the room. And I'm just curious about that, because with the companies that I've run, I can't imagine sitting in front of hundreds of people telling my competitor that I think that they're doing a really great job. So could you talk about that? Is that a rule in financial services? And how do you think about holding both vicious competition and real respect and cooperation together at the same time?
All right, so I'll give my answer. You're gonna have to have an answer as well. I start with, it was Bob Wilmers. I mean, he just believed that you needed to invite in as many corporates and institutions into decisions as possible, and his role model, his behavior would be that he would invite people in, including the banks. He's something else. I mean, he campaigned against the what ended up being the long-term mayor of Buffalo, and then when the person won and came into his office and started arguing, Bob said, "Stop," because you won, so you're in charge. What are we going to go do now? Like, there was always this congeniality kind of thing. I've learned that if you want to build a community, there are several rules that you have to have. One is that anybody should be allowed in, and everybody should be invited in. It doesn't matter whether they're your competitor or whether they think different. If they believe in the mission of the community, then they're an asset. And that's exactly how I see, and I've seen Bob and Eastern for a very, very long time. It would be unhealthy to not have multiple institutions and it would be unhealthy to not have multiple institutions, but ones that think alike is really important. We're doing a thing, I don't know if you know this, with the Boston Medical Center. Where's Alistair? Right. Around financial education, and I'm so psyched that it's M&T, Eastern, and Citizens, each playing a different part in helping somebody figure out how to buy a home.
Yeah. I think the thing that I've always found, banking, I've never been in any other industry. I've been in the banking business for 43 years. But what I've noticed is it's very different than other industries, Diane, in terms of competitiveness. Again, we depend on the health of our communities that we're in. And that rising tide does lift all the boats, particularly the bank. And because we're all rooted in a legacy of service, I think it just drives us to work together. We have a common interest in the health of whatever market we're in, whatever customers we're serving, whatever communities we're trying to help with. So I think a lot of it comes from that, because as I look around this room and the many others at other banks, we all have that same degree of affinity and partnership. And anywhere I've been, that has always been the case.
Yeah. We also lost a little bit in the financial crisis in terms of our reputation. We probably needed to do some changes, whatever. But ever since then, there's actually been a renewed effort around solving common problems, basically.
So other questions, folks? Anyone have any other questions? Take one more. Oh, Brad?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Pratt Wiley with the partnership. Maybe connecting two of the themes of your conversation. You've talked first about developing leaders, and you also talk about trust. And so how do you develop leaders, especially in a moment like this where Gen Z, Gen Alpha seem to be more cynical than any of their peer generations are at the same time? So how do you develop leaders that trust and are inspired, as opposed to leaders that are cynical and disheartened in a moment like this?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think for us, like the job actually is building trust outside of a financial transaction. Like if you're introducing yourself, and I come up to Bob and I say, okay, well, I got a deal for Bob, so I got to really figure out how to get him to trust me. It's too late. One of the more extraordinary things we found, which we unknowingly sort of did in 2009, was this creation of affinity groups or resource groups. And literally when the management team said, yes, we should do this, we didn't really understand what we were doing. But what happened was you had people throughout the organization at different levels doing different functions who decided that they wanted to run one or start one and start a chapter. And all of a sudden we were able to see leadership outside of your day job, right, in a way that we couldn't before. And so oftentimes I find that it takes the courage to put in place a non-traditional leader to give them that opportunity. Now, it's an equal challenge once everybody sees what leadership is, right? That they sort of say, well, geez, I don't know if I really want to do this or not. But you've got to find ways outside of the norm to be able to identify leaders and give them a challenge.
And I think that's so true. I mean, as you said,
United Way.
United Way. Well, we were joking about this because part of the hazing at M&T when you came in was that if you were considered to have any sort of potential, Bob's way of testing your mettle was putting you in charge of the company's United Way program. So the year after I did it, René did it. And we both have a common experience of having a night job called the United Way, sitting in a dark and empty one M&T plaza downtown, filling out United Way cards.
Filling them out.
Yes, filling them out, typing into the computer. Pratt, to your point about how people engage, and I think this is René said earlier, people come to your company because you've made that investment in innovation. That's a differentiator. They come to M&T because of the work you do in community, what you talked about with Boston Medical Center. That kind of work is tangible, it's impactful, and it really inspires people. And they're like, I want to be a part of that. Yeah, I like the business, but I really want to be a part of that.
Yeah. And you got to build that culture where leaders want to be.
Yeah, great. So other questions, folks? Yes, we got one more in the back.
From Boston College, and my question regarding René's ideas are, since M&T Bank has a strong emphasis on the culture and also the core values on integrity, collaboration, and curiosity, what metrics do you use to measure them, and how do you set expectations?
Wow. I think what ends up happening is that it's shared experiences that allow you to sort of understand what those characteristics are. So we have an incredible, I'm looking around the room, there's a number of you who know this because you worked for M&T. We have an incredibly rigorous process. So every year, if we decide that our priorities are these 4 or 5 things, you literally can walk into a branch and ask somebody in the branch, and they will tell you, here are the priorities of the institution. So we have a very structured, regimented thing. But I think the value part is a little different. It's not like measured on a scale. It comes through these shared experiences that you have. And one of the gifts that we happen to have, and I think this sort of comes from operating mostly in small towns and mid-tier cities, is we have twice the average industry tenure. So, I hate to say you know it when you see it, but by the time you're around for 5 years, you actually know what norms are accepted and what are not. And, there's so many stories I could tell, but every once in a while when we would go off to explore an acquisition or to meet somebody to do a partnership, Bob's old boss, a guy named Mark Zarnecki, the last thing he would say when we would leave the room is he'd say, "Oh, hang on, remember, you're from Buffalo." Right, which meant a lot of things in those values, right? But it definitely was be nice reputation, right, is everything. And so, I wouldn't say it's a strict measurement, but we know it when we see it, and that's in part because we have a pretty rigid performance management feedback system that's at the core of the bank.
Other questions, folks?
Renee, sorry. When you're doing an acquisition, other than all the financial due diligence you might do on is this a good deal or not a deal, how much emphasis do you put on the talent acquisition you're going to get from that organization or the skill set? They may offer things that you don't, that you could transition to M&T, vice versa, but how do you equate? Bankers are really good at running numbers, and sometimes the economic model looks great, but the human capital number doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And I think that causes lots of problems downstream for both banks.
I mean, it's a real, first off, if you're in a position where you think you have to do a deal to be around, it's a major problem because you can't turn things down, right? But if you're healthy and you're thinking long term, that factor of who are the people is everything. I mean, I can think about when we go through our process, it's not a top-down process. So if you're running a large set of branches that are close to the proximity where we might be going, you're involved in identifying and actually answering the question, could this work? Right? Right down to the individuals. And then a lot of it as well is like, what's your commitment going to be? So an example would be during the financial crisis, I think we bought 5 banks. And we got a phone call one day, and they were asking us if we wanted to do something in Pittsburgh, to bring the bank to Pittsburgh. And so we went around the table, and we looked at all the numbers, and all the numbers worked, and it was wildly profitable, and it was great. And so we went around the table, 15 people. Want to do it? Yes, 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 all the way. And Bob at the head of the table said, okay, next question. Who wants to move to Pittsburgh? No hands went up, and he literally said, okay, next item on the agenda, right? It's a people business, and it requires a lot of human commitment. And I actually also think that most investment in digital has been made with the idea that we're going to lower the cost to serve the customer. And so in the moments that matter, like the pandemic, and like PPP, and like the financial crisis, when everybody needs when there's a crisis, everybody wants to see a face. And in a lot of cases, those faces aren't there anymore, right? And if you've missed that opportunity, right, your whole purpose is to be there in moments that matter. Right? Thanks for the question. I appreciate it.
Great questions. Again, thanks, folks, for all the great questions. We're going to leave it there. Renee, thank you so much again.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Folks, I just want to make sure with a new policy here, I'm going to highlight the single most important thing that was said on stage so you guys can all go home and remember this. And it's not about integrity or trust or accountability. Make sure that you have a family member, an older sibling, who encourages you to attend Boston College. On behalf of our friends at Bose, we have a small gift for you. Renee, Bob, thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great.